of signs. What is a sign, friends? What is a sign? The dictionary defines a sign as any object, any action, any event, any pattern that conveys a meaning. Any object, any action, any event, any pattern that conveys a meaning. In medical terms, a sign is objective, is observable, is an observable phenomenon that can be identified by another person. Now, keep this scientific explanation or definition of the word sign in your mind as we go through the study that will continue fitting the purpose that John had in mind when he wrote his gospel. As we saw last week, as we learned last week, during the first part of the series, John's objective for the writing of his gospel is to present evidence for the divinity of Jesus. How many of you remember that part? Amen. Amen. Now, inspired by the same one that chose John, he now chooses 7, not 2, not 20, but 7 miracles. How many, friends? 7 miracles. There are 7 miracles in the Gospel of John that were picked out of the 37, 38 miracles that you find, or at least over 30 miracles that you find in the whole Gospels. Now, out of those many, and we already saw that John said that there are many more. 30 maybe was just half a day for Jesus during his ministry. So if we have about 30 miracles in the gospel, in the all 4 gospels, and why is it then, would be the question, that John decides to pick these 7 out of 30 plus miracles? Why only these 7? Now, to answer that question, you and I need to keep in our minds that the purpose of the Gospel of John is to show, is to prove to each one of us that Jesus is indeed divine. He's up to giving us evidence for the divinity of Jesus. Now, inspired, like I was saying, by the Holy Spirit, He is now giving us 7 out of those miracles that are strong for John, strong and sufficient argument to defend his position, to defend his testimony, to defend his belief, to defend his point. Friends, miracles in the Gospel of John are more than special. Not just because the number 7 is the number that represents perfection in the Bible. But listen to this, friends. The Gospel of John is speaking the number 7 that describes perfection in the Bible to describe now the perfect one. Miracles in the Gospel of John are more than special. To begin with, the word miracle comes from the Greek semeon, which means a distinguished mark or an indication. In other words, for John, the miracles he will present in his gospel are an indication of the divinity of Jesus. So each one of those signs or miracles are for John an evidence, a proof of the very fact that moved him to write his gospel. They are signs because they point to Jesus' divine nature. We said last week that every paragraph, every miracle, every saying, every event, every encounter, and everything that is written in the Gospel of John is to prove that Jesus indeed is the Son of God. Now, this is not a casualty. This is not a coincidence. This is not an accident. John recorded only those miracles, signs that can be attributed then to God. Because the writer, again, is up to prove to you, to me, that indeed Jesus is divine. Jesus is the God of John. Today, dear friends, I want to invite you to submerge with me in the very first one of these 7 miracle signs found in the Gospel of John. So let's study John's first evidence for the divinity of Jesus. This, my dear friends, this, my dear church, is the beginning of science. John starts taking us in chapter 2 to a wedding. How many of you have been in a wedding? How many of you? How many of you have been in a wedding just within a year? How many of you? How many still remember the wedding that you were part of? No one. No one. Just one. I know there is more than one married person here. How is it that the rest don't remember? Let me ask that question. You didn't hear. Okay, you didn't hear. Is the microphone working? How many of you still remember the wedding that you were one of the two main characters? You still remember? You still remember? Wasn't that a special day? For the couple, one of the most important days in their lives. Some of us, like me, don't remember. I don't remember what took place there. I just remember that I was there because I've seen the pictures and I'm in the pictures. So I was there. But I don't remember how I got there. Right? I don't remember that I was standing there. I don't remember that I went to the book and wrote. I don't remember those things. I don't know what Vivian gave me to make me come. No, I just don't remember. I was so nervous that I don't remember that took place. But I do remember one thing because of the pictures. Our wedding was special. Because weddings are supposed to be special. It's a special moment, and that's why so much time and resources are invested on this special day. They are at least supposed to be that way. Now, keep that in your mind as we come to think and to study what took place during this special moment of the first sign, the first miracle of Jesus. He decided for this to happen at a wedding. Now, what was Jesus doing this in this wedding? Okay, because it was a special place, because it would just his presence would make this even more special to the couple. Why was Jesus there? The city of Cana of Galilee, and he says of Galilee because there was another city with the same name, just to identify it. This city was not too far away from Jerusalem, from Nazareth. Right? It wasn't that far away from Nazareth, which was the hometown for Jesus. So most likely Jesus knew these people. He was coming to celebrate a wedding of somebody that he knew really close to him. Of course, most likely the rest of them that came with Jesus weren't so much expected, and that's why they ran out of wine later. Because he came along with his disciples. Those were many more mouths to feed. So no wonder they lost some of the preparations that they had as wine and maybe even food. But why was Jesus there? The text actually says to us that he was invited. Jesus was invited. And it seems to me that the one that actually had some influence for Jesus to be invited was his mother. There is a reason why we mention this. The mother actually is mentioned before Jesus was mentioned to be part of this wedding. The mother is mentioned there, and then Jesus and his disciples that were also part of this. This is very important. We know it because of the text. We don't know it because of the chosen. No one has seen the chosen here. That was supposed to be a joke. The chosen is a serious. And the chosen showed that Mary is already there. You've seen it, right? You've seen it. Are you guys awake? That's why I don't make jokes too much, because I'm not good making them. No, it's not just because of the series. It's because the Bible shows that there is some kind of connection, intimate connection here. The mother is actually having some kind of a main role to play here, because she's mentioned first, and then when she comes to Jesus with that a special petition, she commands the servants to follow what Jesus said. Like she had some kind of voice there. So that's how we can conclude that the mother was somehow close to this family, and that's how Jesus and the disciples are invited to be part of this. Why is John mentioning all this? One thing that we need to know, friends, remember, we're studying the Gospel of John. We're studying what the main divisions of the Gospel of John. We're studying the evidences that John presents to us for the divinity of Jesus. But every time, and this is one thing that we learn from the Gospel of John, John doesn't use those details or those words just openly, just because he wants to fill the blank. Every time he mentions certain details is because he wants us to consider that for the interpretation and the lessons that we get out of the story. You still with me, friends? So there is a reason why he's mentioning this, and we will try to make sense with this. So it's very important to keep that in your mind as we continue with the story that he's sharing. Why is John sharing this story with us? Anyone? Why is he sharing this story with us? Just because he wants us to know that this happened in the life of Jesus? No, because John is proving to us that the person that he wrote his gospel about is God himself. That's his point. That's his point. Now, the mother comes to Jesus and said, there is no wine. And we don't know. See, one of the things that we lose when we study the Bible is that we read the words, and most likely we read that translation. So we read what a person thought about the Greek, the Hebrew words, the Aramaic words that were written in the original. But one thing and we hope and we pray that person will be inspired, and what we receive is the right thing, the right translation. But what we do lose in the translations is the intonation, the tones used. So we don't really know how Mary came to Jesus and reporting this. We don't really know how the tone that Jesus had when he said to the mother, woman, right? What is this to do with me? Was he saying that? Was Mary maybe saying, son, there is no wine, right? Right? I know you can do something about it. Was Jesus really saying, woman, this, or like, woman, smiling and saying, I can do something about it. And so these are things that we lose in because it's a written way or form. But the important thing, friends, is that's why we have the whole context to see what's really taking place here. Today, if somebody says there is no wine in any wedding, or there is no food, we will say to everyone, guys, sorry, there is no food. Go home. Kind of thing. Most of us would say that, right? There is no drinks. Guys, we have water now. No more drinks, no beverages, just water for you guys. We will find another alternative, but you just run down to the next store and get some drinks, get some food, and come back. Back then, friends, wasn't the same. We're talking about a different culture. Back then, to be missing something like this was one of the greatest humiliating moments for the couple. It was like saying to the community, this is how we want you to see us from now on for the rest of our lives. People would be thinking about the groom who was in charge of the wedding, that he was not capable of putting that together. He would not be capable of keeping his home together. It was humiliating for the family that was just being formed that day. Hospitality, friends, was simply sacred back then. Was sacred. But not just that. I know you know that weddings were not just a couple hours like today. where I know Samoans can go for 10 hours and so on, right? But besides that, this was more than anything that you can imagine. A minimum of a week celebrating that. Sometimes you will have a feast first, and then you will have the ceremony. Right? You can't afford that doing that today. But that's how they did it. And after the celebration, they will go for 6 more days celebrating the two. During that time, the two that just got married were like queens and kings. They would be treated as queens, a queen and king. And everything that they would say will be an order, a command for everyone else. It was just the best time for the couple. So now imagine what people will say to them. Why didn't you make preparation? It's a week long. Why didn't you make preparation? Why are you getting married if you can even afford your wedding? Come on, man. When Vivian and I got married, we simply didn't have money. We didn't have money. We were students. We were studying at that moment. Right? Talking about marrying in faith. Friends, we didn't even plan our own wedding. We just attend our wedding. Literally. We attended our wedding. God's people did it for us. We didn't know what was going to happen after the wedding day, but God knew what He was doing. He always does. Young people, when you place your life in God's hands, He does take care of you. Vivian and I, years later, can say with confidence, God has indeed been good to us, and we know the best is yet to come. Praise be our God. So I picture this couple being also young and confident and moving in faith. They might have known that God will take care of them. What they didn't know is that God, friends, listen to me, that God was there at their wedding. Yes, I know we always pray for God to be present, but John is saying, guys, this time is for real and for sure. My God was there. John says, let me prove it to you. And so, the problem arises, right? No wine. What? But Mary knew who she carried for 9 months. Mary had witnessed glimpses of His glory here and there, for sure. Mary knew that when in trouble, when in need, when in despair, you go to Jesus. Or maybe she just knew that her son was very resourceful. And as always, she could count on Him. He will solve the problem. Don't know how, but He will bring a solution. And then she simply says, do whatever He says. Some of the most important, some of the most powerful words that any woman, any person has said. Just do what Jesus says. You want to be happy in life? Just do what Jesus says. You want to feel and experience success in life? Just do what Jesus says. You want to be a joyful person in life? Just do what Jesus says. That's the key, friends. That is the key. Now, wait. Just wait. This is a public event. Jesus can just come out and just like that when it is not yet His time. But friends, mothers know the heart of their children better than anyone else. So Mary appeals not to Jesus' watch, but to Jesus' heart. Now, Mary seemingly was confident in asking Jesus to perform this. In other words, Mary knew that Jesus would do it. Mary knew Jesus. Mary didn't panic because Jesus was there. Here's the lesson for you and for me, church. Here's the lesson, friends. Be sure to get to know Jesus when the waters are calm. So when they get agitated, you know where to go for help. Friends, if everything else is okay today, please get to know Jesus today. This is the very reason why John wrote this gospel. So that you know Jesus. So that you know Jesus. You know. Remember, that's one of the biggest words for John. To know. You may ask, what if I don't get to know Jesus when everything is okay and I get in trouble? What if I need help? And I would say to you, friends, don't panic. Because if you cry in your despair, He will come to your rescue anyhow. And use this difficult time, listen to me, and use this difficult time to build your confidence. Now, John is going to give us more evidence of this very thing later in his gospel. But the bottom line is, in the good or in the bad, God is always there to rescue you. Call upon His name. 6 spots, right? Six big yards. 6 big yards here. The expert says that we're talking about at least anything from 120 to 180 gallons of water. And for us to have a better idea of how much this is, we're talking about 9 times as big as a car gas tank. Why do they need so much water, especially in an area that was difficult to have water just stored like that? Why so much? The Bible tells us that there was a ritual. John is telling us there was a ritual of purification that involved these many waters. And what took place here is that the Jews washed their hand before, during, after a meal. This, my friends, however, was not only for that, but also to wash vessels and cups. And also, of course, who can guess it? For what else? Foot washing. For foot washing. So they needed lots of water. But here's a question. Did they really need that amount of wine? I understand they needed so much water, right? Because many people needed to wash their feet, wash their hands multiple times, wash their vessels, wash this and that. Yeah, you need that amount of water. But why so much wine? They didn't need that much wine. Why so much wine? That is the question, friends. Listen to me. Not to me, actually. Listen to John. When God blesses, He blesses abundantly. When God blesses, when He wants to bless His people, He doesn't give you only what you need. He gives you above and beyond. But wait. Wine. Right? Some of us would like to deviate from this, but it's written there, wine, right? And some of you didn't say anything about me saying blessing abundantly, didn't care about that. In other words, you missed your shout at that moment simply because the word wine stayed there in your mind. Wine? We're talking about wine here? Friends, I'm just going to go on passing mentioning what took place here. Let's talk about this a little bit, just for a little while. Was this, here's a key question, was this alcoholic wine? Right, this is the dilemma, and it's not as easy as saying no, friends, because there are tons of books that have been written against that. But you know what? Instead of me trying to deal with the arguments and all that, I just feel asking questions at this point. So allow me to do that, please. Here's a reflective question. Do you really think Jesus will give alcohol to people at this wedding? Do you really think that Jesus would perform the first sign of his divinity by giving them an intoxicated beverage? Do you really, really think Jesus will bring all the attention of these people to him in this way? May I remind us all that John is presenting this as evidence of the deity of Jesus. May I also remind us that John already told us about the pre-existence of Jesus, which means that he was part of the council against wine in the Old Testament. And the first thing that he would do publicly, he would just go against that and create alcoholic wine. By the way, I'm just thinking with you, friends, and just throwing these questions at you. As you know, as the MC, which is the main person here that receives that the wine is taken to, the MC mentions, that is mentioned in the text, the custom was for them to receive the low quality, inferior wine later in the wedding, so they can taste the difference, right? That's what we read, right? And why did they do that? Because, he explained, because tongues are dulled at this point. They don't feel it. They can't tell the difference. Right? That's what is explained here in the text. Here's the question. Were their tongues really out of commission at this point? Yes or no? How do we know? They were not, friends. They were not. Were they drunk? They were not. Because when you go to verse 10, you will see that the MC says, you have kept the good wine until now. They were not drunk. Their tongue were not dulled. They could taste the difference. I won't say any more on this. I won't say. I'm not here to solve that problem. Okay, let me just say this only thing. Jesus not only gave them lots of these, maybe 180 gallons, but he also gave the most delicious, the most refreshing heavenly grape juice. That's how the God of John is when he blesses, friends. When he blesses, when God blesses, when Jesus blesses, he gives the best. Any witness in the house? And so this is the story that he's sharing with us. John is sharing with us for one sole purpose. And the purpose is found in verse 11. So just bring your eyes, your concentration, your focus to verse 11. In verse 11 now we see that John is like, finally, this is what I wanted to actually say. This story that I shared with you is actually for this one reason. Verse 11. We have arrived to the point, to the verse where John wants us to be. Here's the reason in verse 11. Here's the reason why John shares so much details of this event. John wanted us, friends, John wanted us to know that this miracle was a what, everyone? A sign. This miracle was a sign. It was the beginning, to be exact, the beginning of the signs that prove, that indicate, that show that Jesus is indeed the Messiah, the Son of God, God in the flesh. Because that's the reason why John is writing this gospel. Because that's the reason why John shared this story with us. Because he wants you to know that Jesus was not only another teacher. Because John wants you to know that Jesus was not only another good man. Because John wants you to know that Jesus is indeed the Son of God. And when you talk about the Son of God, you're just not talking about something or somebody that God created. You're talking about God himself. And that's what John is proving to us. Here's the point, friends. Here's the point. Through this one sign, this one miracle, Jesus manifested, that's what we read in verse 11. Jesus manifested his what, everyone? His glory. Thank you. His glory. That's what John says, that when Jesus performed this miracle, gave this sign, Jesus manifested his glory. Now, this word glory is key for us and for our search and our research on the deity or divinity of Jesus. The word doxa comes from, the word glory comes from the Greek doxa. Now, the Greek doxa is found 19 times in the Gospel of John. The reason why I mention these times that the words are used in the Gospel is because is to tell you that this Gospel of John is the one book, together with 2 Corinthians, that mentions and uses the word glory more than any other book. John uses the word glory 19 times. Just the same as 2 Corinthians. They both are the books that use the most this word glory. Now, why is this important? Oh, let me give you, if you're interested, what the second book in the Bible is that uses the word doxa the most. What do you think it is? The book of Revelation, written by the same author. And the times that the word doxa is used in the book of Revelation is only 2 less than in the Gospel of John, 17. So John uses a lot this word doxa. Let me tell you this, friends. Listen to me. When John uses the word doxa, and remember, he's the writer that uses it the most in the Bible. When he uses the word doxa, he 90.99% he uses it in reference to God or his Son. Okay, 2 people are with me. John uses this word only, almost exclusively, in reference to God or his Son. John knows, friends, John knows what he's doing because he's presenting this Jesus as the Son of God. John is proving the divinity of Jesus. Do not miss that. He told us about the sign of turning water into wine to say Jesus is divine. Let me say it in a different way, because I don't hear everyone saying amen. I just hear a small group here in this big group. Let me say it in a different way. John is saying that glory is only given to God and God alone. Amen. But at the same time, John says, give that glory to Jesus. Give that glory to Jesus. Jesus, my dear friends, Jesus is the God of John. And signs and miracles are evidence of this. But John says, I do have more to present. This is not it. Because this is only, what everyone? The beginning of signs. So John concludes the story with verse 11. And the reason why Jesus manifested his glory at this point was because of the main goal of the gospel. Does anyone remember what the main goal of the gospel is and where this is found in the gospel? Anyone? Anyone? Pastor David, help us. Where is this found? The purpose of the gospel. We studied this last week. John chapter 20 and verses 30 and 31. John says there that Jesus performed many more miracles, but there are not enough books to write about those and to contain everything that Jesus did. But then he says in verse 31, read it please, read it. Chapter 20, let's read it so you know the purpose, you don't forget the purpose. So John chapter 20 verse 31. But these are written that you may believe. What are written? The signs, the miracles, that you may believe that Jesus, may believe is the key word, that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in His name. That is the reason. So John writes this gospel so that you and I will believe. But we already said that believing in Jesus as the Son of God is the only way to receive Zoe. Does anyone remember what Zoe is? No one. Life. Life. Remember the process? You hear, you know, you believe, you receive life. That's the process that John is walking us through. You hear, you know, you believe, you receive life. Not any life, but quality of life. Not just eternal life, but a life that starts here and now. Quality of life. That's our God, friends. That's the God that I want you to fall in love with. That's the God that I'm trying to get my heart out so that you will fall in love with Him. So that you will want to live with Him eternity. The moment you fall in love with this God, the way He wants you to fall in love with Him, you will not ask whether your cat will be in heaven, whether you will have this or that you will be able to travel in planets or not. All that you will care for is that Jesus will be there. And that you will be with Him. That's the kind of love that that God is trying to imprint in your heart. So that will move you to do and to be. Fall in love with this Lord. So he concludes this, bringing us to the purpose, the final purpose, and that is to believe. Hear, know, believe. And we already said that this belief is found in the gospel more than any other place in the Bible, by far, 109 times. From the Greek pisteo. Listen, family, this is the first time in his gospel that in chapter 2 that the word is used in regards of witnesses of Jesus' power. Now that's what signs are for. That's what miracles are for. Miracles are given so that you are witness the power of God, so that you believe in God. That's why miracles are for. How many of you have prayed for a miracle in your life? In somebody else's life? How many of you have asked for something that you know it requires a miracle for that to happen? Now you know, friends, that miracles are not just given for you to be provided. Are not just given for you to be healthy. Miracles, first and foremost, are given to you so that you may witness the power of God. And by witnessing the power of God, you believe in this God. That's what signs are for. That's what miracles are for. So that you believe Jesus indeed is the Son of God. The God of John. So let me ask you this simple question. Do you want a miracle? What are you going to do with it? Because miracles are not for you to have a better life only. Miracles are not for you and for me to believe in God. Miracles are, for you and for me to believe in God, in the God of John. Pray for a miracle. Expect a miracle. But remember, the God who gave it to you, remember Him and live for Him. John brought this story to us so that we would know what we hear. So that we will know that it's not a coincidence that we have been born in a family that praises God. That is not a brainwashing process that our parents went through, and that's why now we come into the church. No, young people. We are here because one moment, at one point of our lives, God decided to reveal Himself to each one of us, so that by experiencing His presence and His power, we come to believe in Him. And by believing in Him, we're ready to live with Him. There is no greater miracle than that. Because it takes a miracle, to change these broken hearts. It takes a miracle. Junior, it takes a miracle. Because my heart wants to go left. My heart wants to run away from God. My heart wants to do things that God is not pleased by. My heart wants to be pleased in its own way. So I do need transformation. So I do need to bring this heart to the Lord and say, Father, I don't know what I actually need. I don't even know what you actually expect me to be. But here's my heart. Do as you please. Perform a miracle. And the God of miracle will take it, will transform it, performing that miracle, and will give you a brand new heart. This is why John tells this story. This is what John shares, what we find in chapter 2. Because he wants you to know there is just one God who can do that. And that is the God of John. Let me conclude. From water to the best grape juice. From ordinary to extraordinary. Do you feel ordinary, friend? Do you know that Jesus can take you to the next level? Do you know you are ready just the way you are at this moment? You are just the way you are right now. He can take you to the next level. To go from ordinary to extraordinary. What happened with the water can also happen with each one of us. That's the miracle that Jesus indeed wants to perform in our hearts. So all that we have to do is come to Jesus. Come to Jesus, who being the brightness of His glory and the express image of His person, God's image, God's person, and upholding all things by the word of His power, God's power. And Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 8 says, to the Son He says, your throne, O God. This is why the author of Hebrew confidently writes this, that the God of the universe called His Son God. He says this because he knows Jesus is not just a created being, but Jesus is indeed coexistent, pre-existent, and self-existent, the God of the universe. I want to invite you, friends, to be convinced of the divinity of Jesus. But if you are not yet, then remember, this is only the beginning of science. We're going to pray now. And we are going to ask this God we're learning about together through the Gospel of John to fill our hearts, to take our hearts, to transform our hearts, to give us a new heart, a heart according to the ways of God. And I love the special song. I love the special music that we have this morning. But because it just spoke about that. He said that there are ways that God has, ways that are not like ours. But God's ways, though they are different from our ways, friends, God's ways are always better, are always the best. So if you ever felt that this is just too hard, that this is just too difficult, that I don't like this, that I don't agree with this or that, I want to invite you, friends, to consider the ways of God, which are always higher, better, and way more satisfying than any other way. So I want to invite you, dear friend. I want to invite you to make a decision today. I want to invite you to finally bring that heart of stone to the Lord, so that He can give you the heart that He gave in the beginning to the perfect Adam, to the perfect Eve. A heart to love, a heart to follow, a heart to obey, a heart to rejoice. If you want that heart this morning, if you want to receive that transformed heart this morning, all that you have to do, dear friend, is to accept and receive the transformer. If that is your desire, I want to invite you to stand up right where you are. We are going to pray together. I'm bringing my own heart to the Lord, my rocky heart to the Lord. And symbolically, I'm giving that heart to Him. But He knows that I cannot survive without a heart. So the transformation, just like the going from water to wine, that is a long process, and it takes days and months and years to obtain the best wine, but Jesus did it in a moment. In the same way, Jesus can take that heart that you need to survive and give it back to you transformed, being the best, the greatest, and ready to follow God's voice.